As part of the conclusion of this new functionalism, we see that this concept of new functionalism was introduced somewhere in the middle of 80s, and Alexander was one of the I think greatest proponents of this new functionalism. So idea was the reconstruction as well as revision of Parsonian theory, because Parsonian approach was I think at the lowest ebb at that lowest level at that time. So we see that the revival of that Parsonianism was the main, let's say, goal. So we could call it as a new Parsonian stand. So the main feature of this movement has been its synthetic character. So it wanted to, let's say, bring in different strands, different approaches within that particular functionalist approach. So when we bring in a number of other approaches, just like the conflict approach within this, so it could cross-fertilize social system theory with Marxism to provide an adequate theory of societal crisis. So that is how we see that this approach involved the incorporation of other factors, particularly which were the focus of the criticism of Parsonian approach. So new functionalism is a tendency rather than a developed theory. Aim kya tha iska? To create a form of functionalism that is multidimensional and includes micro as well as macro level analysis. So previously perhaps it was more like focusing on macro level, and we see that it was more of a unidimensional kind of thing. So that was one of the, let's say, goals of neo-functionalism. So secondly, they wanted to push functionalism to the left. So functionalism basically was a rightist kind of approach. It was not incorporating the differences, the individuation of the people, the let's say challenges of the individuals. So it was looking into something which is traditional, and that traditional approach has to be followed. So the new functionalists wanted to push functionalism to the left and reject Parsons' optimism about modernism. So thirdly, to argue for an implicit democratic thrust in functionalist analysis. Democratic thrust where people differ, people deviate, people try to bring in change. So they wanted to, let's say, bring in that. And fourthly, to incorporate a conflict orientation. So it's not always consensus, there is a conflict as well. So conflict, some of the, let's say, approaches which are part of the conflict school of thought, they wanted to bring those in too. So the fifthly, to emphasize contingency and interactional activity. So anything which is, let's say, suddenly emerges, uncertainty comes in, so they wanted to incorporate that kind of thing. So the issues among non-functionalists were like, how may researchers best characterize the relationship between conflict or contingency and social order? So functionalists, the main focus of functionalists is equilibrium, the static kind of approach, the social order all the times. So the scope of conflict is not that much given, that it is not given that much emphasis. So they wanted to bring that in. Then also, to what extent Parsons must emphasize upon the relationship between social action and social order be reformulated in order to, let's say, inform empirical research. So one of the major goals of neo-functionalism was the re-establishment of the legitimacy and importance of Parsonian theory. The idea was to revive the Parsonian approach. So neo-functionalism has succeeded in this effort. So that's what Alexander thought, that they have succeeded in the revival of, let's say, a Parsonian approach. Now, perhaps that project has completed. And now Alexander gave that kind of impression. Particularly, he explained in his book titled Neo-Functionalism and After. And thereby, he thought that the future of neo-functionalism was doubtful. So Alexander made it clear that he has outgrown a new functionalist orientation, and he wanted to move beyond Parsons, that is beyond new functionalism. Therefore, he had outgrown a new functionalist orientation. So although he said that he owes a lot to this functionalism, he is indebted to this in functionalism as well as new functionalism, but then that is all, that's over. Now he would like to move beyond that new functionalism. Therefore, he moved to a new wave of theory creation that looked beyond the important achievements of new functionalism. So he said goodbye to this new functionalism, although he said he is indebted to that kind of thing. And in that context, it may be concluded that new functionalism was just a movement. It remained a movement rather than the creation of a new theory of functionalism. And the idea was to reappropriate Parsons' let's say, structural functionalist approach.